Okay, everyone, you're all very welcome. Good morning. You're all very welcome to our community centre this morning for today's event. My name is Micheál, and I'm the Development Officer with the Community Wetlands Forum, and it's great to see so many people here. So, just a couple of practical things. As you'll see, hopefully we'll all have seen this, but nevertheless, the agenda for today. So we're going to have a panel discussion, and really the whole theme for this morning is exploring collaboration between local authorities and community groups for community-led wetland conservation. And I suppose the theme emerged from the fact that, in recent years, there's been appointments of local authority biodiversity and climate action officers, and they, I see that as presenting opportunities for greater collaboration, and having engaged with some officers in the last year or so, I know that there is an opportunity for more conversations and more two-way sharing of information and knowledge. So I hope that that's what today will provide, or start perhaps. So we'll have the panel discussion, then we'll have tea and coffee in there when you arrive, and then we'll have a group discussion, or small group discussions in your tables where you are, and then after that we'll be launching the new strategic plan, so the strategic plan of the Community Wetlands Forum for 2024 to 2026, and there's a number of copies available, and we're delighted that Catherine Casey, the head of climate change at the Heritage Council, is with us today for that. And then we'll have lunch, and then there will be only for members of the Community Wetlands Forum, we will have an AGM, not to be, I suppose, relatively short. Following that then, for those who wish to stay, delighted that we have a visit to Ballydangan Ball then, and I'm grateful to David Fallon for facilitating that, and the local group here. So look, without saying much more, I'm going to hand over now to Chris Hayes from Abbeyleix Bog, who many of you will know, and Chris is going to facilitate today's discussion. So thanks very much, and hopefully you enjoy this.
Thanks, Neil. Good morning, everybody, and my job is to put manners on this panel here and the motley crew that is here to my right. I hope we're looking forward to listen to what they have to say about collaboration between communities and local authorities. There's two Barrys, not Barry's tea or anything involved in that. Two Barrys and a Michael and Patricia. All right, so I'm going to introduce them, each one of them as we go. I'm going to give them 10 minutes, and I will there will be a big noise going off when they have to stop, or I kick the chair or something. But if you have questions, I will leave it till the end. Is that okay for everybody? We will try to get them through their paces as quickly as possible, that we can have a chat and questions and answers. Is that okay with everybody? Okay, first up, Barry. Now, Barry is currently Biodiversity Officer for County Clare. There's now one for every county in the Biodiversity Officer, which is brilliant. And there's a load of them in the audience here today. Welcome to you all. Thank you very much. Then Barry, as a peatland ecologist, has a bit of a stint as a consultant, a couple of years, worked for Port Ramona for a couple of years, and was involved in the Shanakaya Logs project, the restoration of that, and that's how he gets involved in the community part of it. and now he's Biodiversity Officer. Anything you want to add, Barry? Thank you very much. All right, Barry, on you go.
Thanks, William and Chris, and thanks everyone. It's great to be here at the launch today. I suppose I'm just going to give you an overview of, I suppose, wetlands and communities from a County Clare perspective. Myself and Patricia here, and a lot of our colleagues over here on the left-hand side of the room, we're part of the Biodiversity Officer Network, which is headed up by the Heritage Council, coordinated by Catherine Casey, who's also here today. And basically, I suppose, I'll cover our Clare Wetland Surveys that we've carried out today, initiated by my colleague in General McGuire in 2008, a Heritage Officer in Clare. Talk about Community Biodiversity Action Plans and wetlands and how we can integrate wetlands into those plans, and then wetland inventory surveys as well. So our role, as I mentioned, is funded by the Heritage Council, and we have a remit to deliver key biodiversity initiatives and work with local authorities to develop a biodiversity action plan. We partner and collaborate with key stakeholders such as Community Wetlands Forum, and then really, I suppose, our role is really to bridge wetland communities with the various different counties to organisations like the Community Wetlands Forum, because we know that they have a huge resource in terms of governance, advice, funding, workshops, and we feel that our role is important to bridge them to that. Those organisations. I don't know why my photos aren't shown up there, but the wetlands legislative context and policy, I suppose, site designations, we SACs, SPAs and NHAs, so they're covered under the NPW's conservation objectives, and the EU Habitats Directive and the regulations are the main drivers there. With the Environmental Liability Directive, Clare County Development Plan, Strategic Biodiversity Objectives, Wetlands and peatlands, drainage of reclamation of wetlands, so this is controlled under the Planning and Development Regulation, so anything that's greater than 0.1 hectare, you need planning permission to drain a wetland, and national peatland strategy. So none of my photos are shown up there, I don't know. So the County Clare Wetlands Study 2022, I suppose this is where we're at the moment. Angela carried out some work in 2008. It was to carry out a desktop audit of where the wetlands were in County Clare, and therefore then we picked it up in 2022, and it was to give an update of those desktop audit, and then we carried out then the County Clare Wetland Survey to 2023, which was the first field survey. We targeted Ennis, and Ennis is the I suppose it's facing a lot of pressures in terms of urbanisation and development and urban sprawl. So we found that by picking those sites that were likely to have high conservation interest, we could use that as a template for trying to protect wetlands in urban areas. And then 2024 and 2025, which we funded for, will work then through the local Biodiversity Action Fund and local communities to carry out further surveys, and it's wetland surveys that are carrying out that work. So why do we carry out a county wetland study? So it's a valuable resource to local authorities in carrying out its function, especially in relation to biodiversity protection and sustainable planning. Again, it's to inform our ecological network map, so you'll know that we have different kind of network data sets that help inform County Clare's ecological resources. It's to inform strategic planning, so we incorporate the data sets into our planners database so they can see when they're assessing planning applications where those wetland sites are. It's to inform public assessments and ecological impact assessments, assist in the identification of natural areas, and improve conservation site selection and community involvement as well, and again, future research. Yeah, we might just,
Can I ask, can everybody see the screen? Yeah. Yeah? You want it raised?
Magnified.
Exactly, it doesn't help. Apologies for that. Thanks. Everyone, hopefully it's great questions now for afterwards. We can run over to it.
Okay. That couldn't have gone any worse. Okay, so wetlands, legislative context, I suppose, maybe is these are the main documents, national strategy. We have county development, strategic biodiversity objectives, and it's county development plan objective 14.9, which covers wetlands, and CDP 15.18, that covers peatlands. These are really important county development plan objectives because it gives a lot of ways of protection of all our different biodiversity, habitats and species of conservation concern. So I covered a bit about the Clare wetland surveys. You can see there 2008 and 2022, we've just done 2023, giving you the rationale. So then this is just an example of a map on the right hand side. This is what our planners use. They integrate this into the planning system. They can see where all these wetlands are. If we don't know where the wetlands are, we can't protect them. So this is just an example of 2006. You can see on the left hand side is a little kind of a pond, and this here on the right hand side is kind of a bay. And you can see this is Ennis, it's north of Ennis. And again, you can see it's kind of largely surrounded by agricultural fields. But if we fast forward to present time, you can see this entire area has developed. The wetland pond is gone. That's due to agricultural intensification. And our fen is just hanging in there by the skin of its teeth. But this is happening across the country in every part of whether it's a town or a village or agricultural intensification. So we're losing our wetlands, and the whole idea of carrying out a wetland inventory survey is to document those wetlands, give them conservation value, and promote them through awareness. So in this wetland survey, we kicked it off last year, and it was really prioritised, as I mentioned, because of urbanisation. So we picked 19 sites. Wetland Service Ireland worked on it, and it was to inform again the planning department, and then community outreach programs as well. We'll talk about it in a second. And again, raising awareness through talks and trying to get local communities to take ownership of the local wetlands. And the findings were we had 6 sites that were of national conservation importance. Most of these are undesignated. We didn't know that these sites had such a good value. Again, Cladium Mariscus, Spain's, Transition Myers, Turlocks, Marl, Lake Habitat. 7 sites were of conservation importance, county conservation importance. 4 sites were evaluated of high local conservation value, and 2 sites of local moderate conservation value. But we all know that wetlands, no matter how big or small they all have a value. And again, the individual site reports and habitat mapping was really detailed. And again, the events, they kind of to promote the findings of this World Wetlands Day, we teamed up with Community Wetlands Forum and Wetland Service Ireland. We had an online webinar which was well attended. I mean, there's a lot of interest with communities in Clare for wetlands. We had a series of winter wildlife talks which hosted last December to promote wetlands and field conservation. National Biodiversity Week, National Heritage Week, bog walks and talks. These are all effective ways to try and raise wetlands and peatlands into the consciousness of the public. But I suppose more than that, if we can get the hook and get peatlands or communities interested, it's now to integrate community biodiversity action plans. So Clare's had a high number of communities developing community biodiversity action plans, and I'm working with them to integrate wetlands into the community biodiversity action plans. So this is just an example here on the right hand side. This is Corrifin, and it's got 1, 2, 3 wetlands around it. So trying to maybe work with the local landowners to integrate those wetlands into the community biodiversity action plans also gives them ownership, and then they can spread the message as well. But again, our bridging point is the Community Wetlands Forum where they can get that guidance. And again, implement the biodiversity actions, working with landowners and your partners, which I'll just discuss in a minute. So the Community Wetlands Forum Biodiversity Fund, it is three strands. Strand 1 is 5,500, where communities can work with a professional ecologist to map and classify their habitats. Strand 2 is €8,000 if communities groups work with 2 landowners and managers, and particularly farmers. So again, if it's a barn or a box, or kestrel nest boxes, working with a farmer at the edge of the village, but also wetlands could also be included here as well. Strand 3 is up to 11,000, so once Strand 2 and 3 kick in when you do Strand 1, and then it's up to 3 to 5 landowners. Again, it's a clever way of bringing in landowners and farmers at the edge of towns and villages to do conservation work with local towns communities. So as Chris mentioned, I'm just going to touch on Shanachyle Bog. Shanachyle Bog, as Chris mentioned there, I worked with Board Mona, David Fallon and myself, worked in the ecology unit, and we carried out peatland restoration and rehabilitation in the Midlands region of Ireland. And Shanachyle was actually the basis of my master's before all that, back in 2010, and I knew the landowner Catherine McKeesh, and Catherine approached me. She wanted to do something for her land for biodiversity, and she didn't quite know what to do, and I said, well, why don't we restore and re-wet the bog? I had my experience at Board Mona, and none of this was done in Clare before. It was really alien. We're very close to Limerick, we're only just 2 kilometres north of the University of Limerick. So we decided that we would go for funding under the EIP scheme, and it was just a local 55,000. It was to re-wet the bog. So the first thing we did was re-map the habitats. Ecotope mapping, this is the bog, it's very degraded, 5 to 10% sphagnum cover. We need to be hitting over 40% sphagnum cover over a large area for it to be active bog. A lot of communities think that a bog, when it's growing vegetation, that the bog is growing. It isn't in actual fact. it's the sphagnum mosses. It needs this sphagnum mosses. Here it's over 90% of the cut over in Shanghai because the drainage network broke down. So this is it in 2000, this is it in present times, and then scrub encroachment was a huge issue there as well. Functional drainage systems, a lot of the drainage network had broken down. We call that reduced functional drainage systems because the drainage capacity is reduced. And it had a series of these kind of cracks and crevices running through the bog. So we put in Pete Downs and worked with Francis Macklin and RPS group to design a plan, do the water level surveys, and then carry out a peat and restoration program. So this is us creating the bunds on the high bog to hold water. We take it from a borrow pit, we build up the peat dam, we do a shallow excavation, and then we attach that peat dam so it doesn't erode over time. That's because all these peat dams and these bunds will sink over time. So we build them good and high, over 60 to 70 centimetres, and this is just a digger in operation, and he's cutting out the peat dam, installs it, and then you get to raise the water levels and sphagnum starts to colonise. So again, it's going from this to this, where the bunds are in place. We've got the water levels up at 20 centimetres, no more. These are all filling up with sphagnum. This is October 2022. It's a permanent plot that we developed. And now it's covered in sphagnum last August, and it's really, really quick. It's sphagnum cuspidatum, it's the pioneer sphagnum moss, and it wraps itself under the submerged Calula vulgaris, the heather, and yeah, okay, we're done. Just finally, I just want to really just bring back the last point. It's just connecting communities and the impact this project has had. We've worked with volunteers. Limerick School of Art and Design did an exhibition on it, Birdwatch Ireland, the Irish Wildlife Trust, Limerick Branch, University of Limerick, their carbon scientists have been up and looking at to do a carbon project. The local IFA, Hackett was down to us in September 2022. And more importantly, now we have Michael here, Carroll, and he's part of the Tullamore Lions Club. You saw an article on Shanghai, and it's compelling to do something similar. So again, these are all different initiatives, and obviously the Community Wetlands Forum have profiled our work as well. It's important to raise the recognition of community groups as well, in terms of awards and how they can protect habitats. And again, it's the knock-on effects, the byproducts of peat and restoration, wetland conservation, biodiversity, water quality, carbon sequestration, really communities. Sorry about the whole hiccup. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Barry. We really put you under stress circumstances. Okay, I will do just a little bit of a summation. I think what's interesting, there's a couple of topics that already comes up for the next session that we possibly can have a conversation about. Next up, I have another Barry Tapster, Climate Action Officer for Roscommon County Council since 2023. He's been working in the north since 2005 as Environmental Education Officer, Recycling Officer, Environmental Planning. He's also been with Conservation Volunteers Northern Ireland and the Ulster Wildlife Trust. Overseas, he taught people English in Japan, konnichiwa. And he's also worked in the forest industry in Canada. So he's been traveling around building up his carbon footprint. He's also worked as a volunteer in Central America. So I'd like to hear from you, Barry. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much. As you did mention, I contacted 4 million trees in Canada during this session. We covered hopefully advantage sequestering the carbon over that time. So thanks very much for having us along. I'm just going to be flicking through. I can see we're probably running a wee bit late now at the moment, so I'm going to get through this really quickly if I can. So we have been putting together our climate action plan in the climate action unit in the council. Now there are climate action units that have been set up in all of the councils throughout the country. Since most people think are now in place, most of the climate action plans that we were setting up have now been adopted. It was a deadline of the 24th of February. So everyone got them adopted, we got them passed, and we're now in the implementation phase. It was a long time coming. When I started last June, and we were spending most of our time actually consultations and pre-draft consultations and various different iterations of our plan. But now we've got the plan in place, and here it is in the hand. It's a weighty looking tome. It looks like a phone book almost. Half of it is at scale here, so it's maybe there's a bit more to it there than it looks like there's a bit more to it than it actually is. And one of the aspects of it that we're very interested in building up the relationship with the communities and help us to come up with solutions ourselves. Because there's only, in the council, there's so much we can do because we're limited as well. So we're very keen on promoting outreach as much as possible with the communities and to get ideas from yourselves. One of the aspects of the Climate Action Plan is natural environment and green infrastructure. So that will be our nature-based solutions, and peatlands are going to be key for this. Over the years, the degradation of the boglands, you're probably more aware than I am, but the boglands are going to be key in many ways. They're going to provide, they're going to help us with adapting to the problems of climate change, and they're also going to help with mitigation and reducing the amount of carbon emissions. So it's, for us, we see this as being they're going to be key, particularly in the Midlands area. And to set up to help promote that, and to facilitate a just transition. There is a just transition fund. So and this is something that it's ongoing. There's going to be various different iterations of it. We have actually applied ourselves through some projects through the Just Transition Fund, and now it's going to be something that you'll be seeing more over the next number of years. Just Transition Fund, it's EU funded, so and like I say, there will be more iterations of that over the coming years. We've also just completed our community action fund, climate action fund. And we were quite pleased with the amount of applications that we had through that. And there was also an aspect of that where there was linkages between, there was a strand 1A which linked just between local groups and also groups in the north, and we had a few applications for that as well. So, and all good, strong applications. Hopefully they can they all go forward. And there, this is just a graphic just to show how the climate has actually changed. So you probably, a lot of people will be aware of this, but it kind of shows you quite starkly there how much the planet has actually been warming up. The climate has been warming up. We are, and this is one of the evidence bases is actually from the bogs. So there's one way of finding out about gaseous emissions is through drilling ice cores. The likes of Antarctic and the Arctic, and that can tell us quite a lot about the gas composition over the years in the buildup of methane or CO2 or whatever the gas would be. Over the years, by ice cores, whenever they're drilled, it's a cylinder which is taken out of the ice, and that can tell us, that'll be getting back thousands of years, it'll tell us what the composition of the atmosphere is. But whenever we drill, you can also do this, a similar process with peat. So we can have peat cores as well. So that can tell us quite a lot about the plants that were dating back thousands of years as well, depending on the depth that we're going. It tells us the composition of the soil. It tells us things like, for example, if there was carbon, high amount of carbon in a specific part of the core, it will tell us that there was maybe burns at that time. So it gives us quite a lot of good information. And also, as far as the plants, some plants can live in a warmer environment, so it can tell us, gives a good indication of what the temperatures were like in Ireland at that time. And as I say, we want to build as much as we can. We're a kind of one-stop shop. There's 3 of us in the team. So we've got myself as the Climate Action Officer. we've got a Community Climate Action Officer, and we've got our Climate Action Coordinator. So we've been in post, like I say, since last year. We're looking at getting ideas from yourselves, because there are certain things that we know that we can help with, particularly within council itself. Council itself actually has quite a high carbon footprint, so there's lots of actions that we are looking at doing internally. And as I say, we're in the implementation phase of our climate action plan now. So up to this point, there has been quite a lot of plans and going through all the legislative process. But we're now the action plan is now it's being adopted, and now we're implementing it. So some of the things that we'll be doing, like for example, next week we're going to be having an electric vehicle demonstration project within council. So council staff are going to be invited to dealerships have been invited along to bring examples of their cars, and council staff are going to be taking the test and having a look at them and that type of thing. And then we'll be rolling that out and doing that in the public as well. So that's one of the things we do. We're doing lots of things like that. So and we're going to be as open as we possibly can to ideas, because the people in the room probably know more about boglands and bog restoration and nature-based solutions than we do. So we want to hear from yourselves. So I'll be around during the day here, so hopefully we can have some conversations, and we will be taking on board any ideas and hopefully be able to drive that forward as much as we can. So thanks very much. I won't speak for any longer here. I know we've intended a couple more people to speak here. So I'll be looking forward to making contact with yourselves and having a conversation with as many people as I can here today. So thanks very much.
Thanks, Barry. Appreciate you made up some time for us. Okay, next one is Michael Carroll. He's from the Tullamore Lions Club. He's also a CWN member. He's a retired telecommunications engineer, originally from Australia, Tipperary, and now living in Tullamore for the last 25 years. He's joined the Lions Club in 2022, and in order to give something back to the community, decided to engage in a project, peatland conservation project, which they call the Clonbeal project. And he hopes that through that project, they will get other Lions Clubs around the country to get involved in peatlands and wetlands. I will leave him to tell you a little bit more. Thanks very much.
Good morning, everybody, and thanks, Chris. Yeah, so this is an aerial photograph of Clonbeal and near Rath in County Offaly, and in January of last year we started a project to conserve and restore this area of the Waterwater with the Brennan family. So I'm here representing Tullamore Lions Club, but also Clonbeal Peatland Conservation Group. So I'll touch on that a little more in a second. But I suppose firstly you're probably wondering, well, why did the Lions Club get involved in peatland restoration? Personally, I have no experience or no knowledge, so we're really starting from zero. So what I'll do first is I'll just give a little overview of what the Lions movement is all about, and then the steps that, the sequence of events that led me to be standing here today beside the man who inspired me originally, Barry. But I'll explain all that now. So, so the Lions movement is all about serving our community. So we're all volunteers. Our motto is we serve, and we do that by helping individuals and organisations in need. So many of you will be familiar with, for example, the Christmas food appeal. So many clubs like ourselves, we would gather non-perishable food items around Christmas, create food parcels, deliver them to families in need. You've probably also heard about like Who's for Hospice. It's a project that we in Tullamore are really proud of. We've raised nearly €1 million towards a much needed hospice facility in the Midlands. Just to show the diversity of stuff, we recently ran a fundraiser for childhood cancer research. Last year there was a need to close the funding gap for a new arts centre, so we ran a miniature concert and an arts auction. So that just gives you an idea. But also, like Lions International, our governing body, globally, they in recent years they had a big focus on the environment and on sustainability. So they were challenging all the clubs all across the world to try and come up with different projects, different ideas on how we can help the environment and help our community. So I joined, as I said there, I joined in 2022. And one of the first challenges, we had a meeting with our sustainability committee, and I was asking, have any ideas, what can we do? And initially, I was thinking about it, and literally the following day, I opened the Farming Independent and I read about Shanghai, and it was like a light bulb moment, I have to say. You can tell from Barry's passion for the project. It came across in the article. He was the first person I rang. He suggested a ring IFA, which I did, and we got straight away. We were involved with Community Wetlands Forum. We got lots of help. We attended an open day in Shanghai that August. And that was really when, for me personally, I could then see, what was happening, the passion for the project, the benefits that could be achieved. So armed with all that knowledge, we went back to our club, and in September that year, we made our pitch and said, look, this is something I think we can do. We can help facilitate this to happen around the Midlands, and we got unanimous approval to proceed. So that then led us to forming, of course, our first big challenge was to find a landowner to work with us, and we did. It took a couple of months, but we eventually were very fortunate that John Grennan and his family made their portion of Clonview more available to us. So we established a group, the Clonview Peatland Conservation Group. It's members of our own club. I'm the chairperson of the group. We have colleagues from Tullamore Lions Club, and Rath is very close to Bor, so they were keen to get involved, obviously the family. Professor John Feeney from Bor is an advisor to our group, and just recently the Abbeyleix and Drumcullen, like a parish development committee, they've joined us as well. And again, I'll touch on that in a second. But the photograph here was one of our first major kind of gatherings in Clonview. It was Easter of last year. You can see John Feeney in the centre, so that's all we found. We were fortunate that they had Amanda Pedro from Offaly County Council, and one of our colleagues joined us, and also a representative from St Brendan's Community School in Bor, because they have a track record in doing, they have a boardwalk, for example, that they were responsible for in an area of Killawn Reserve, which is the bigger area around us, closer to Bor. So, it was good from the start to be involving and meeting with other groups with a vested interest in the area. Obviously then, our focus for last year was to get a feasibility study done. So we had to start looking for some funding, and I suppose this was the first time that we had to engage with things like the local Biodiversity Action Fund and application for that. We actually applied to two. We were kind of advised to cover our bases, so we applied to the Peatland Community Engagement Scheme and the local Biodiversity Action Fund, and we were thrilled then in July when we heard that we were granted the funding through that. We had already engaged with George Smith in Blackthorn Ecology, and George was lined up and he was able to carry out the feasibility study for us, and he brought in Francis Mackin from RPS to do the hydrology part. So we were very fortunate, we had really good people working on it. It was fantastic to see activity happening over the summer. For example, Francis, and RPS, they put down measuring stations around the Bog 7 different areas, and when it became apparent that they needed some help to be taking readings on a monthly basis, we volunteered to do that, so we were able to have a practical input to the project. Throughout the summer as well, last year I actually spoke at a similar event to this in Abbeyleix, which again was fantastic, great learning experience. Great to hear about all the other fantastic projects that are happening around the country. From that, we actually came to the attention of the Chartered Institute for Ecology Management, and they wanted to fund some projects that would have a long-term benefit in the country. So, we provided some additional information. Unfortunately, we were chosen as one of two, and we got some additional funding, which was fantastic, because obviously we got I think 75% funding through the Peatland Community Engagement Scheme, but we had to come up with match funding, and the clubs and the family had already contributed to do that, but it was nice to get some additional funding there as well. So we finally got our reports in November, and it was great. The results are very positive, and the potential for restoration is very strong. And if we now know that we carry out the recommended restoration works as outlined by Francis, that there is potential for development of active raised bog in Clonview at some point in the future. And there were some other things like there are certain species we were told, such as bog rosemary. We had already chosen bog rosemary. It's on the county crest for Offaly, but we had chosen it for our logo. You can see it there on the bottom. But so bog rosemary is in existence in Clonview, and it's not apparently, I wasn't aware of this, but it's not that it's not essentially in all could overballs in our Midlands, so we had some there, so that is a good sign. So that was 2023. In January again this year, we decided that let's keep going. First stage done, but we need to make something happen. We were aware of the Community Climate Action Fund that was opening with applications to be in for March, so we decided that we'd do three things. We looked for funding for three things. One was obviously the restoration measures outlined by Francis. There was rhododendron identified, so we could eradicate that. And we reckoned that we don't want to please ourselves, so we need an ecologist to oversee the project and to make sure that all environmental legislation is adhered to. So we knew for the application process we had to get 3 quotes for all of those. We did all that. We came up with a request interpretation document. We sent it out to multiple contractors and ecologists. We got 5 responses, which was pretty good. We had a good choice. We came together in February. We selected our preferred contractors. We knew then exactly what it was going to cost, and we got our application in. We're kind of hopeful. We haven't heard yet, but we're kind of hopeful when we looked at we're applying under the local climate and environmental action team. That's the 5 teams. That's one of them. And when we looked at the evaluation criteria, for example, it talks about achievability and climate impact, scalability, value for money. So I suppose our application is based on a specific set of recommended actions that we know will have a benefit, and also, as was mentioned, like when we look at scalability, we are definitely working hard to try and encourage other Lions clubs around the country. My colleague John is here with me, spoke about our project at our annual congress this year. We know there's good interest. I've given a few briefings already to other, I'm kind of called the environment officer in the club, but there are other environment officers, so we're briefing them. We provided documentation. We're going to create shortly. We're doing a promotional video as well to try and get the word out there. So again, that's one of our objectives, is to make, for something that we see as being quite successful quite quickly, we hope to, make that happen around the country as well. From here forward, obviously, one of the main benefits of, carrying out a project like this is to provide a resource for the local community. And so just in the last number of months, Rack is in the parish of Abbeyleix, and there's a new development committee that's just been established, and that's the map there. It's just kind of something they've produced, and they have a plan of action to do lots of things around the parish. But they were thrilled, obviously, to hear that there was something, climate related already happening. So we're going to work together with them. Obviously, there's, at some point we'd love to make this open and available to the public as somewhere to reconnect with nature or for biodiversity and climate education. There are already plans for a walkway all around the Clone Reserve, which will pass close to Clonville, so obviously a boardwalk and signage, and all of that we hope will be kind of like a phase 2, and we'll work closely with the local development association to make that happen. I'll just leave you with just a few images. Over the last year, it's been fantastic to be out there and on a regular basis, and understanding more and more about peatland restoration and meeting various people. But I just want to say a quick thanks to a number of people, obviously, like Barry for inspiring us, to Michal and Aoife and CWF for all their help, and obviously the family for making the Clonville available to us, to my colleagues in Four Lions Club, people like George, our ecologist, and Francis, who have been really, really helpful. You also have, our local NPWS Ranger and Offaly County Council, obviously, the Biodiversity Officer there, Lena and Amanda, have been very helpful to us as well. So it's always been like as a group, again, we're starting from zero with no knowledge or background. It's almost as if every door we come to just pushes open so easily. There's that much help there, and that's the kind of the message that we're trying to get across to our colleagues around the country. That don't be overwhelmed by this. It can happen, and there's lots of help, and there are lots of areas to get funding and to make these things happen. It just takes a little bit of effort to get it together, but once you do that, it's a lot of things are possible. So thank you.
Thanks, Michael. Thank you for that. The last speaker, Patricia McCreesh, currently Biodiversity Officer for Monaghan Co. She cut her teeth by starting in the river systems where the water comes from, or the water goes out of. She did a PhD on fishery restoration in the River Eye, tributary of the Liffey, and then spent a few years at the environmental Fisheries Island. Spent 12 years as a biologist with the EPA based in Monaghan. Okay, particularly interested in river ecology, wetland restoration. Patricia.
Good morning, everybody. It's lovely to be here this morning and to see an event like this so well attended. Thank you very much, Neil, for the invitation. I was delighted to be able to speak today. And I really feel that we need to have more of these events. We need to have grassroots people on the ground, networking and sharing information together. I think as Michael's presentation has just proved, that if you take the ordinary man and empower him with information, anything is possible. I worked with a guy who used to say to me he wasn't a big fan of fancy conferences in hotels, and he used to say, if you take the people with the dirty boots and put them with other people with dirty boots, you'll achieve a lot. And I think what he was really saying was, it's the people on the ground that get the work done, and that's the people that we have in this room. So we need to just work together and come together at events like this to facilitate it. So I'm delighted to be able to come and talk about what's been going on with wetlands in Monaghan over the years and what's the future of wetlands in Monaghan. And if we just take just a quick second to admire the lovely photograph that I've chosen for the start of the presentation. And there's a wee story behind it, in that February the 2nd was World Wetlands Day, and I decided to run a competition in the county to literally invited everybody in Monaghan to send me photographs of their favourite wetland. And I was inundated with photographs. And this was the adult category winner. An amateur photographer took this photograph. And what this photograph represents for me, really, is that we're all guilty of taking our wetlands for granted, and we pass by them every day, and we often don't even look out the car window to notice that they're there. But if you give somebody or ask somebody to take a photograph, they have to stop, and they have to take in the whole view, and they have to stop and notice the small details. And suddenly then they're seeing a wetland in a way that they never saw it before. And of almost 600 photographs that I got for the competition, and sadly they weren't all as beautiful as this one, but for every photograph that was sent to me of a shuck or a bog or a drain, it made me smile, because it meant that somebody had stopped and noticed that wetland and taken a photo. And that's the start, that's where we start. Notice your wetlands. So in Monaghan, we've been incredibly lucky for the last 20 years. We had an amazing heritage officer, Shirley Clarkin, who recognised the economic value and the ecosystem value of wetlands long before anyone else in Monaghan Council. And there's still a lot of education needed in the council in terms of the value of wetlands. But as a result of Shirley's work, we have a really good knowledge of where our wetlands are in Monaghan. And as Barry pointed out, if you haven't taken stock of your wetlands and inventoried your wetlands, then you don't know where they are or what's happening to them. So there was various reports, I'll not go through them, but the central one is the middle one there, which was the Monaghan Wetland Action Plan. And when that was published, that was the first wetland action plan for any county in Ireland. So there was, the outputs of that were, map, I won't go through that, but that's a very interactive map. There was also really good, apart from the physical reports, there was great GIS layers created. There was brochures and documents, there was resources for the farming community and really innovative stuff for kids in schools. And one of the outputs was this lovely book here. I have one copy with me. If anyone wants more, just let me know and I'll send them. But this was the kind of thing that engages people, and for the first time really put together and showcased both the natural heritage and the cultural value of our rivers. So the reports and the surveys that have been done over the last 20 years have shown us that, we won't go through all this, but that nearly 2,000 separate wetland areas were identified in Monaghan, and together they constituted nearly 6% of the total landmass of Monaghan. So significant. And what we also discovered was that there are just so many different types of wetlands, so many that despite all of the effort and the work and the funding, thanks mostly to the Heritage Council and National Parks and Wildlife funding, there are still over 35% of the wetland habitats in Monaghan that have not actually been designated into their proper habitats. So there's still quite a lot of work that has to be done. The reports also showed that the average area of each habitat unit was actually just 4 hectares. And if you add together the first 3 of those, almost 91% of the wetlands in Monaghan are under 10 hectares. So immediately you sort of think that the most valuable wetlands are probably the biggest ones, and that's what we think. But we're finding in Monaghan that actually the most diverse and often the most valuable ones are the smallest ones, the springs, the fens. And if they're not documented and they're only small, then just as Barry showed, they disappear without you even noticing. So what legislative protection do the wetlands in Monaghan have? Sadly, very little. We have no national park designation, we have no national nature reserves, one SAC, one SBA, one NHA, and the rest are proposed NHAs and candidate NHAs. So we're very low in Monaghan on legislative designation for our wetlands, which makes it even more important that we know exactly where they are and how to protect them. So one of the actions that came out of the Monaghan Wetland Action Plan was that Monaghan would set up its own wetland forum. And that happened in 2022, which was before my time on Monaghan County Council. And that was made up of a whole lot of different stakeholders from all over the county. And as I say, it was set up under the Monaghan Wetlands Action Plan. And it was supported by the Community Wetlands Forum and by Monaghan County Council, funds from the Heritage Council. So we'll just quickly run through a few of the stakeholders. Their objectives would be very similar to the Community Wetlands Forum: promotion, restoration, education. So who are the people involved? So we have lots of different groups: Friends of the Tullamore River, Lochmuckno, our river catchment trusts. We have gun clubs, we have landowners, we have farmers. It's a really, really diverse group who've come together to form this group. So for example, what did they do? So everybody has a role to play, and we're all sitting at the table, and we often have very diverse views. But the one thing that we have in common is that we all are passionate about wetlands. So the gun clubs are doing things like predator control for some of the breeding waders, or removal of invasive species like Egyptian geese. The Blackwater River Trust are doing amazing work and have incredible networks created with the farming community. And they have fenced hundreds of kilometres of streams in the Blackwater River, and we're already seeing changes in Q values, increases in water quality as a result of the riparian fencing that they're doing in the upper stretches of the Blackwater. We have several group water schemes in the group, and one of them is the Stranooden Group Water Scheme. It's hard to make out, but again, they've planted over 11 hectares of trees. They have fenced something like 35 kilometres of riverbank. Just great work going on by community groups, all who weren't aware of what each other were doing until we sat at the table and started talking about it. Again, the Friends of the Tullamore group are just a great community group involved. And Friends of Lochmuckno, who've just recently published an entire biodiversity study of Lochmuckno, our biggest lake in Monaghan. So there is really good work going on with communities. So I'd just like to quickly highlight just 2 projects that are going on at the moment in Monaghan. And the reason for that is because for you to fully understand the role of the Biodiversity Officer going forward in terms of community engagement, the Biodiversity Officers are a key role now in the Council. We have control of funding, but not just that, as Barry says, we're a great conduit between community groups and sources of funding or knowledge transfer. So one of the projects is being run by the Friends of the Tullamore River. Are really, really interesting. They had already started this project before I got involved, and I was able to give them funding to finish it. We'll hopefully finish the project this year under money from National Parks and Wildlife Service. So what they have realised is that as a community group, it's all very well to say your catchment is mapped. Look up catchments.ie and you'll see your catchment mapped. To the ordinary person, beyond the first few layers, it really doesn't make sense. You need a technical background to understand. So they want people in the Dromore to really understand and interact with those GIS layers, but not in a traditional way. So the first thing they're doing is they're looking at the original GIS layers, and they've noticed there are lots of errors in the GIS layers, and they know that because they're walking the river every day. So the first thing they're doing is they're going to spend the summer walking meticulously through the river and to correct those GIS errors. So then they'll have a really good, solid, ground-truthed map to work off. And once they have that map, they're adding on all the layers that they have. For example, the Dromore River, there's quite a lot of really good biodiversity recorders in that area, and they're all submitting their data to the National Biodiversity Data Centre. So they're drawing down all those records, and they're going to implement or plant them on top of the now ground-truthed GIS map to show where the biodiversity corridors in the river are. And their plan at the end, and it sounds amazing, is to create like a printed 3D model that you can hold in your hand of the catchment with layers almost like a skin that you can plant on top of the 3D model so that anybody can see what it looks like to add and remove layers physically. And it should be a really good exemplar project just to see what you can do with data. Okay. And the other thing they're really keen on is making sure that everybody knows that the data that they're gathering is accessible. So they plan that every slipway on the Dromore River and every bridge on the Dromore River will have QR codes, so that when you're walking around you can just click on them and learn what species are found there, what habitats are available there. A really, really good interactive. And the final project, very quickly, is the Scottstown Blue Dog project. Unfortunately, we only have one Blue Dog site in the whole of Monaghan, one river. It has 2 monitoring sites on it. It's called the Scottstown River. And you would think in a county that only has one Blue Dog river, high quality, high status river, that there would be a lot spent on protecting it. But in a county where the rest of the water bodies are at poor or moderate, that's where the money is spent. So in terms for Monaghan, spending money on the Blue Dog site is really innovative, and it's about, for me, I'm passionate about this project because I want everybody who's in that Blue Dog catchment to understand what it means to be in a Blue Dog catchment. And for the first time, we're starting a project where we can go into a community, and instead of saying, look at the state of the water, what are we going to do about it? We're going in to say, you've been doing something amazing for the last 30 years. You've managed to keep this Blue Dog for this long, despite the poultry houses, despite intensive agriculture. Let's learn from what you're doing. Let's understand what it is that you're doing that's protecting this river. Let's make it even better. There are new pressures coming along the line. We noticed very low flows last year for the first time, so climate change is having an impact. And let's, as a community, everybody, from the smallest child to the oldest person, get involved in this project and make sure that long-term the Blue Dog River is protected in Monaghan. So there's community engagement and the technical. And I'll just leave you with these very wise words. I think they're very apt for today. So thank you very much for having me.
Neil, how much time do we have?
I will say a couple of minutes, 2 or 3 maybe.
Okay. I was asked to sort of try to give a summation of what's been said here this morning. Is there any questions? Anybody who has a very feel the urge to ask a question? Anybody?
I do have one. It's probably initially about Barry. When you did your mapping for Carroll wetlands, and you did say that some of them are maybe of local importance, national importance, whatever. But as a local authority going forward, there's a limited number of zoning categories or grades that we have. Are you going to change or come up with new zoning categories that can maybe help protect these? Because they don't all fall under SPA or SCC or MHA. So it's one thing to map them, but how are you going
suppose at the moment we're carrying out the baseline work. You know, really are starting from scratch. In many instances, I suppose the Article 17 reporting, which is where Ireland does to carry out surveillance of their Annex 1 habitats and Annex 2 species that to be reported to the European Commission every 6 years. So by carrying out that work, we can get an idea of what's going on nationally with all these different data sets that we can submit. We have an environmental assessor and there is a planning team, so they're fed this information as well. Maybe potentially as what they've done in Monaghan, that there could be a wetland action plan, but it's not always that simple in terms of restoration because you could have turbary rights. So you've got multiple landowners to deal with. In certain cases there's OPW managed drainage channels as well. I mean, there's an awful lot of nuances, but right now the priority is to get the baseline information, map it, document it, and then go from there, I think. You know, yeah, we'll do that for the next 2 years.
Quick one.
Sorry, my name is Lincoln Day. First of all, I'd like to thank the committee here from the County Council. And my question is towards County Clare as well. You have Carroll and Clare as well. Have you done mapping in Carroll? So we're talking about wetlands, to get me to know, and Carroll is a phenomenal wetland as well. And it's peatland you focus on today, but have you mapped Carroll landscapes in County Clare? And Roscommon would like to see how you're doing it.
There was a limestone pavement study carried out by National Parks and Wildlife Service a number of years ago, and the GIS desktop data sets, they're available to download, so they give you a distribution of where those limestone pavements are. We have the burn, and a lot of that falls under the SAC network as well. I suppose there is probably potentially more work that we'd like to see to complement the Irish Semi-Natural Grassland Survey. So there's calcareous grasslands, there are shallow soils on karst landscapes. So that's something maybe as well we'd like to do, but there is quite a lot of that work done already, but anything additional to that, we definitely would like to investigate that. But my colleague, Jen McGuire, Heritage Officer here, has done a lot of work with the Burren River Trust as well and National Parks on that.
Thank you.
So unfortunately, time is a bit of essence here, but let me try just to put a couple of strings through what we've heard here today. The one thing a couple of things that I picked up through all the presentations here, and thank you very much everybody for your time, is the multi-level, multidisciplinary stakeholder engagement that was involved with everybody. And I think it's key. It's one of the key issues that we need to address. We have a problem in Ireland that we have a lot of state involvement into conservation and change with the environment, and we have communities involved. We don't have the strong NGO sector in this country that is directly involved in restoration. I'm not saying there's not. I'm saying not as the size as in the UK. So there's a gap. And also local authorities traditionally in this country doesn't get involved like they did do with partnerships in the UK where they do massive restoration work. So that is the lack. And I think we're starting to close that gap now. We're starting to go with all the different state agencies and people that is involved, and the biodiversity officers, all the data that is there. And you've all alluded to it, how much data is available and how much surveys is being done. The surveys for wetlands, almost every county has done a survey in wetlands over the last 10 to 15 years. And the last count I was looking at it was there's around 12 to 13,000 wetland sites been identified all across Ireland. And it is not the size that matters, as you said. It is every one of them is important. But it is a question is there's nothing happening with them, really, in essence. And you've alluded to it, Barry, that if we can use that surveys that we have and bring it into plans and local plans and getting communities involved as stewards, as people who look after it, and even, Patricia, you've mentioned a couple of community groups that I wasn't aware of. That is already there, latently doing and protecting and involved in their own local actions. A couple of other things that I just want to bring up here, just from Barry Hillside, the county perspective, and how important it is that, especially now with the new Biodiversity Officer and people in place, that we really engage with communities. And from the community wetlands perspective, from the communities perspective, it is not how do we engage with communities, but it's how do we get communities to engage with. their wetlands, and how do we get communities to engage with the environment? And they are there, and they are ready. Give them wings. Give them the necessary caffeine drink that they can do, and that is by the support. Make it possible for communities to do it. And if you empower communities, and you've alluded to, Michael, that the supports are there now, and communities needs to be activated, and that is what the role is. And you can only do it if we are all equal partners. I've heard that every time. The other thing that I just, interestingly enough, once somebody in the EU said that this country have a lot of policy and a lot of plan. We are very good. We are very good with producing policies and plans in this country, but we don't implement them. And the actions on the ground can only take place if we have communities involved with it and multi-stakeholder, multi-level engagement with each other. And that is what's important. And the Community Wetlands Forum and all the communities involved there has proven that. Michael has proven that. The Carroll project has proven that. You've mentioned a couple of projects. And the climate issue is a complicated issue that I hear, but we can't see it in isolation. We can't see biodiversity in isolation. It's all about well-being of communities and everybody in the country. And if we work together. That is the messages that I find from all of you. The empowerment, the support systems available, nature-based solutions, important. That the nature can solve the issues. There's a lot of notes that I made, but I think there's a couple of issues that we can do for the next session that we can discuss as to what we can do together. Thank you very much, Patricia, Barry, Michael, for your contributions.
Great stuff. Thanks, Chris, and thanks to all the speakers. So we'll now have a break. So there's tea, coffee, just in behind those double doors.